Hello, everyone, and welcome to our episode of the JRS Topics podcast. In the previous episode, I was talking about the new Mission Impossible movie and some latest music releases I want to go over. But in this episode, I want to go over the latest hit game. I guess you could say. I guess you can call it a hit, really, especially from a hit series, Final Fantasy 16. Yeah, I'm very excited to review this game. I just beat it a few days ago. I know I'm very late to the party because this game came out in June 23rd, 24th. Yikes, I know I'm a few weeks off there, but it's mostly because I've been very back and forth with the game. So yeah, anyway, enough of that chatter. Let's just get right into the review. So for those who don't know, I was a huge fan of the Final Fantasy VII Remake back in 2020. I think it launched during quarantine and stuff, and it honestly became one of the fragments I have of that year, one of the most enjoyable aspects of that year, despite all the chaos that was going on. Kind of separated me from that and put me in a world of fantasy, no pun intended there, but yeah, it really did. It was a tool of escapism for me. It really just made me venture into like this 40-hour epic world with all these characters and these beautiful graphics and this beautiful landscape and this great story and this terrifying villain. It had a lot of things going on. And actually, it was my first Final Fantasy game that I think I really played. I've obviously seen the other Final Fantasy games, and I've obviously, I remember when Final Fantasy 15 came out, 13, 14, all the older games too. I just wasn't like personally invested in that type of stuff because JRPG still is. I'm sort of like, I guess, playing more JRPG games to sort of adjust to it. It wasn't necessarily like my favorite thing in the world, especially how the Final Fantasy direction was, and I guess how it kind of lost me when I was younger. I guess the older I got, aka now, and also when I play Final Fantasy 7, it just kind of like made me appreciate Final Fantasy as a whole too. It just made me appreciate the direction, the art direction, the musical direction, just how they go along with the games. It's very fun. It's very it has a great narrative, very interesting characters, playful as well. It's just a whole. It's just honestly a great experience to have, and it's a very long game as well. But yeah, anyway, fast forward to Final Fantasy 16, because they're putting the second half of the Final Fantasy 7 remake sort of on the back burner. I know they announced it and they're going to release it sometime near in the future, which I'm very hyped for, and this is proof that Square Enix right now is on a roll when it comes to banger games. But we finally received the Final Fantasy 16, which is also a very long-awaited game ever since Final Fantasy 15, which is 6 years ago. I'm sorry if I got the math wrong, but yeah, it's been a long time since Final Fantasy 15. I haven't played Final Fantasy 15 yet, so no spoilers, obviously. But yeah, coming into Final Fantasy 16, I kind of expected it to be a bit more adjacent, if not a significant improvement from Final Fantasy 7, since there's a 3-year gap in there, even though they were obviously working on those games way before. I would say that in a way, Square Enix did improve with this game, but it also just kind of went a few steps back as well. So let me reiterate before people get angry at me and mad at me. Let me start off more with, I guess, the pros this game has. I'm going to just say right off the bat, it is one, if not the most stunning game I've played in the PS5 era. Keep in mind, this is a PS5 exclusive until I think 6 months later. I think they have this very weird time exclusive period. Pretty sure they did this with the Final Fantasy VII Remake before it got to PC and Xbox. But yeah, as I said, the visuals look absolutely phenomenal in this game. Like, these cutscenes in general are some of the most vivid and realistic, photorealistic cutscenes I've seen in gaming history. It's honestly just top notch. And I know Final Fantasy and Square Enix improves over the years when it comes to the visuals and cinematics for the Final Fantasy games and franchise. So it just keeps revolutionizing with every game, and that's saying a lot, because Final Fantasy VII Remake was absolutely stunning in its visual aspect, and I just loved how it looked overall. It looks so vivid, it looks so like colorful with its tone and stuff like that. And while this setting in Final Fantasy 16 is more dark and bleak, it still looks beautiful in a lot of aspects. The gameplay in this game is honestly stellar too. I love how the combat flows in the air. It feels natural. It doesn't feel necessarily out of place. There's so many cool combo moves that you could do here. The skill tree in this game is also pretty cool. You can sort of do like a reset with your build if you're not If you're not comfortable with how you're playing in your build, or you want to like improve in some areas a bit more than other areas, it's really cool with how much accessibility you have when using your powers in the game. The OST on this, the music in this game is top notch. It's like Final Fantasy VII Remake. I actually have some of the songs from the demo on my Spotify playlist. I just have that album saved, and I've been bumping it a lot because man, it just makes me levitate. There's so much like fluidity in here. The strings, the horns, the trumpet sections are just crazy. The scale switches are also insane too, and I just cannot wait until all the OST is ported into the streaming services and whatnot. But yeah, man, the OST, it's so freaking amazing. I love how it changes when you progress in the game. When it gets to the darker areas, it just sounds more haunting, fitting more the protagonist of Clive's mindset. We're getting more into the backstory scenes, getting more of the flashback scenes, the contrast between his younger self and to his older self. I just love that combination of those two worlds and those two time periods, and how the music just flows excellently between those periods too. And man, once you get near the ending, which I won't spoil, the music just swells so much and it becomes more tranquilizing and calm, which I think fits more of the scenario of what happens exactly at the end, which I won't spoil too. So now, once again, to the nitty gritty of the game, which is the story. A lot of Final Fantasy games are known for having amazing stories, great characters, memorable plot lines, everything. For this game, however, I'm a bit indecisive exactly with what I want to say with the story. Personally, for me, I felt that this story was kind of a stretch, and I understand where it was going from. Obviously, it's a more darker and bleaker setting. It feels like it's more influenced by the likes of Game of Thrones and very medieval shows and books and lores and stuff like that. Because I mean, the comparison you can make from here for Game of Thrones is obviously the Night King arc, where there is this god who wants to kind of rule the world and just make a dystopia for other gods and just control everybody's minds, like the Night Walker plot that was going on in Game of Thrones. But obviously, this one is done much better than the Game of Thrones one, and it's a bigger focus. But yeah, and also the whole kingdoms fighting each other and empires falling down because of backstabbing. The Game of Thrones style is what I'm trying to get at. Everything feels very Game of Thrones type and influence, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying it's stripping it off. I like their spin in here, especially adding that Final Fantasy spin in it and not losing its identity in the meantime. But I feel that along the way, it can get kind of messy and complicated to follow. Now, a cool thing about this game is that you can have an active time lore, which is that during the cutscenes or dialogues, you can open up this little virtual book or something, and it'll pop up and it'll show you like different characters or themes that are being discussed. And you can access it and read a little paragraph or description that gives you more context of what they're trying to say, which is very cool, and it's really cool for, I guess, a lot of lore nerds and stuff like that. But even going with those books and all the description, which did help in some scenarios, that was kind of lost. I still feel that it doesn't tell the complete story. It doesn't tell the complete like picture in general. And even with that, I felt that it kind of felt like an excessive amount of lore or an excessive amount of description, which to the point that it's like you kind of lost me the story sometimes. Now, the story isn't horrible. Don't get me wrong. There's some pretty cool characters. I did like Clive, even though I was kind of 50-50 at him in the beginning and his motivations and how it felt a bit weird and odd and how he carried it out. I do like Jill. I mean, Jill is a pretty cool sidekick. I mean, she sort of acts like a sidekick too. So that's sort of a sidekick, and the other characters here are also pretty cool. The thing is that it's very hard for me to mention names, especially what happens later on, because again, I don't want to spoil a lot of things. And this game, as I said, is very weird when it comes to how it arranges the characters in the timeline and the events that proceed with these characters. So I'm gonna just say overall, the characters in here were pretty cool. Some were kind of underdeveloped, to put it in a way. But I think for the majority, I think most of the arcs were pretty well developed, especially this is a 40-hour game. I kind of wish that we got to play more as Joshua in this game. Again, I won't spoil how many levels you play or whatnot, but it's just that I feel that the Square Enix could have added a few more levels to Joshua's arc, or Joshua, or playing as Joshua in general. Because there's a lot of scenarios in this game and this story where Joshua has some very interesting like scenarios, and it's like you kind of want to know about his whereabouts, not just like kind of like leave it implied through the cutscenes and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of feel that we should have played more as him, especially how the demo kind of gave you the impression there's going to be way more scenes and way more missions playing as him too. Many of these boss fights feel something like straight out of an anime scene, or like the final boss type scenario, but repeating it to like a lot of these major bosses. I honestly kind of left with the desire of wanting more boss fights in this game, because like overall, like there's not like that many boss fights that are as as grand as they are. But every time that there is a boss fight, it just hits, man. It just hits, honestly, amazing. And it kind of let me it honestly left me speechless a lot of the time, most of the time, to be honest. It was really cool. I like how they arranged it too, and just always the imagining at the same time, kind of pairing it up when you land your hits or when you dodge or do the cinematic clashes. There's so many things that are going on and built into this game. And to be honest, that was probably my favorite thing this game has to offer next to the OST. I have to say that the quest design for this game is extremely flawed, in my opinion. There are like 68 main quests scattered around this game, and out of those 68 main quests, I honestly don't know which number I would put of the ones I really enjoyed. But there were really just a few of them that I kind of felt like I really, really, really enjoyed. Obviously, including more of the boss fights that you get to play in this game, or the more arena-esque missions that you play too. Uh, it kind of felt that a lot of this game was just like a bunch of talking with other characters. And look, I get that it's a story game too. It's an RPG. It's a linear story. It's a bit more serious with its tone. It's bleak. It's dark. It's trying to get you emotionally invested with these characters. Sit to them with the end. I understand. But Jesus Christ, man, the amount of quests where it's like, bro, there were like 3 or 4 quests like in a row where you're just in the hub. Pause. I mean, you're just like in your social hub, and it's just like talk to this guy, then talk to the other guy, then talk to this guy. The quest's ended. Like, what is the point, bro? Like, I mean, I get it's like, again, to know the characters more and to have like a little chit chat, but it's like it adds nothing to the damn story. It adds nothing. It feels like you could have just like summarized this like going off screen. That's what I'm trying to get at. Going off screen or just showing a cutscene that sort of like summarizes this, like a little speed thing, like a little speed montage. And also, there's a character, I forgot her name, but she's supposed to be like a teacher. She's just one of the side characters. She sort of like gives you the lore explanation behind the empires, or behind what's going on just currently in the social climate, and she sort of like points it out. Oh yeah, we can go this way and that way in a way. That sounds crazy, but yeah, I mean, she gives you advice from trying to get at. But it's like every time she does one of her explanation lore type of scenarios, it's very boring, and I was fighting the temptation to skip the cutscenes. Cause bro, she talks for like 5 or 10 minutes straight, and it's so boring just listening the amount of lore and words this woman is saying. And by the time it's done, you still have a lot more chit chat to go through, and it was honestly a pain in the ass to go through this type of quests. And I'm glad that those type of quests are over from this run. Damn, bro, that really sucked up a lot of the time, and I had so much like bottled up rage from just like rage and boredom from those quests, if I'm keeping it real with you. And also, bro, the side quests in this game are just like, I mean, I played a few. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't play that many side quests. If I played a few, I did some sort of the monster hunt type quests, which I think were pretty cool. But the side quests in this game are just fetch quests in a nutshell. It really is. It's the same thing as those boring main quests. Also, it's not that rewarding. To be frank, the level system in this game is kind of pointless when you think about it. I mean, basically, like, you start off with this game obviously in level 1, the first hour, yada yada yada. But how you end this game, at least for me, because I was just going like full on main quest for most of the time, I ended up at level 40, which like I got through like without that many issues, to be honest. And it's like, so what's the point of the level system? Frankly, what's the point of the level system? Because I personally thought with the game that had a level system and how RPGs operate, like you would have like the levels You had the levels pointing out on the bosses or in the side bosses. And by the way, that thing almost never comes up when it comes to fighting like major bosses and stuff like that, because most of the time you kind of have plot armor. Not gonna lie, like halfway through the health bar and stuff like that, you kind of go on with your icon, and you start going with that thing, and it's like the mech power that you summon, and it's like the whole fight just becomes extremely easy. It's a very complicated way of just saying, yo, just like be in this power level. Look, like I appreciate that you don't really have to grind in this game to really catch up with the level, to really catch up with the enemies level, and try to be at the same position where you can fight them too, and an even base. But at the same time, it's like, what's even the point? Because I think the point of the level system too is like, if you become more over leveled, you can like one shot these enemies, but you can still one shot the same level that they are. So it's like, what the hell is the point of leveling up if you can do the same thing at the same level? It doesn't make any sense for me personally. And also for like people that are interested in like getting like the most OP weapon in this game, don't get it really, because you're just gonna make the game easier than what it is. Also, about the difficulty setting in this game, it's kind of weird because there's two modes in this game. There's story mode and there's action mode. So story mode is supposed to be the easy mode in this game, and action mode, I guess, is supposed to be like the normal / hard. Which, by the way, this game is not hard at all. I think I died a few times at max, and that was more like end game type stuff. The first, I'm not even kidding when I say the first like 17 to 20 hours in this game, I didn't die a single time. And I'm not even saying it's a flex. I'm just saying it because that's like what actually happened. I think I died like 23 hours in. Like 3 hours later, when I got more into the, I guess, serious and slightly harder boss fights. I appreciate that Square Enix wants to be a bit more accessible with its audience, bringing in newer people who are not that experienced or familiarized with the Final Fantasy games, or maybe just are not great at video games in general and just want to focus more on the story component if you're a masochist, I guess. But yeah, I get what they're trying to get at, but it's like, why not just leave like other games? And I think they did this too with Final Fantasy VII. It's easy, normal, hard, and very hard. That's it. That's all you need to do with this game. And then New Game Plus if you want to like get an extra difficulty. Like that's all you need to do. Anybody can pick any setting they want. It's not hard to let know what they want to pick. It's that simple. It's that simple. The action story mode thing had me confusing and bugging, and I low-key thought that I was playing this game in easy mode. It's just that easy. And it's funny of me saying this because Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think I played it in normal, kind of had me struggling at some boss fights. It was kind of difficult at some times, not gonna cap. Especially the swarm area too, where it's like you're limited in like your items and stuff like that. And also a thing with this game is that every time you die, especially in a boss fight, they just kind of like reset your items too. Like let's say you didn't have any potions or high potions or whatnot, but when you die, all of your items just come back like full on max. And I like that, but it's like I don't like, doing that every time is like, so what's the point of me getting all those potions and spending all that gil and stuff like that? Like what is it, bro? So this has me like thinking like I'm sort of like playing this game like an autopilot in a way. It kind of does. But yeah, I guess like my bigger difficulties with this game. It's not to bash the game, but that for playing a 40-hour game, it kind of has to like be pretty explicit with those complaints if I'm keeping it real with you. But overall, I kind of had like enjoyable experience with this game. Again, I think the gameplay in here is smooth. It's crisp. The visuals are absolutely stunning and amazing. Also, the voice acting. I want to get to the voice acting. The voice acting in this game was pretty cool too. I do feel that sometimes the facial animations when you're not in a cutscene, when you're just like engaging in normal dialogue between two characters, feels kind of plastic and kind of cheap. It just kind of feels like some Elder Scrolls Oblivion like facial recognition type stuff, where it's like they're just like their mouths are opening and closing, but it doesn't feel like the words they're saying are coming from their mouths. Like the synchronization feels a bit off in those dialogue moments, personally speaking. Also, the emotions just don't relay as much as they do in the cutscenes, obviously, because like the amount of power they're using and blah blah blah. But still, it feels kind of weird and kind of like, again, like Elder Scrolls Oblivion type. But overall, I think the voice acting was pretty cool. Clive's voice acting was honestly great and phenomenal. That deep the sort of that deep British accent was honestly top notch. Sid's voice was honestly incredible, even though they used the same voice for a blacksmith in this game, which I thought was absolutely incredibly funny for me personally. But yeah, I think that the British accents and the more, I don't want to like be discriminatory. Obviously, they're not all British, depending on the sectors they're from and stuff like that. But that type of accent, I thought didn't feel like plastered on. I did feel like they did pick native actors who were born in those lands, so you could say that thing with that natural accent. It doesn't feel like there's like, a guy who's not of that descent forcing on an accent, which I've heard in a lot of video games, and I've seen it in media and stuff, and it just turns out to be kind of terrible and mid. I like how they kind of like got from those. I like how they got those actors from those parts, and they really nailed it. Another thing that I want to say about the gameplay is that I kind of wish you could switch between party members. I get this game is more focused on Clive, and Clive's a pro tag and all that stuff. But there's not really an excuse to not switch party members, because Final Fantasy games are notoriously known for switching party members and like using the different abilities or magic and stuff like that, and being that interactive. So this game being like more secluded in that and just using one character, and also you have an infinite amount of magic, which, look, it's cool that you can use as much magic as you want. But at the same time, it's like that kind of defeats the purpose of the mana power stats that the previous Final Fantasy games had, especially Final Fantasy VII Remake. So yeah, I kind of wish you could play as Jill, you can play as Sid, you could play as Torgo too. Honestly, those characters had amazing abilities, and I honestly want to play as them too, especially Joshua, to have more levels as well. It's cool that the AI that they use are actually very supportive and helpful, especially Torgo, as he is with you 95% of the journey too. But yeah, I honestly love how that works too. But it's like, I kind of feel that there needs to be an update where you can just like select, like pick which character you want to use in certain scenarios too. Like you could in Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy VII, as I said, to like the older Final Fantasy games, where you could pick the party member you want to play as and stuff like that. So to wrap this up, because this review is long overdue, just seeing this thing, just searching out almost 24 minutes of runtime from the recording software here. I just want to like wrap this up and say that Final Fantasy 16 is honestly a pretty good game. I like it. It's just that the flaws that it has are kind of major, and it can kind of like put a stop in this game at times, and it can really put it in a chokehold at times too. But I feel that the gameplay, the music, the great cutscenes that are placed in this game too, especially story wise and just visually, are just amazing and stunning. I think it's enough to support the low points of this game, which sure can feel like a drag, and sure can really stunt the whole speed and flow of this game in general. But man, once you get to the gameplay parts, and once you get to like the fight scenes, once you get to the boss battles, which is just amazing, I think that you're gonna cherish a lot of what this game has to offer, especially especially the second half of this game, which I feel that it gets better as it kind of goes on. So what score am I feeling for this game? I'm honestly feeling a strong 7 to a light 8, going more in the 8 out of 10 side. I think it's a very enjoyable game. Again, it has its flaws, but for a PS5 game in this era, I think it's good enough. I think it's good enough to be in the best games the PS5 has to offer right now. So yeah, that's all I have to say for this podcast episode. Hopefully the next episode I'll be covering Barbie or Oppenheimer, which I'm extremely excited to see. I think by the time I get this episode out, I've probably seen it, or I'm in the process of seeing, because obviously tackling those two Goliaths is going to be insane for the theater, since everybody wants to go see those two movies too. Yeah, honestly, cannot wait to see it, and cannot wait for the future stuff I have planned for this podcast thing. Yeah, again, thank you guys so much for listening to Jared's Topics Podcast. Take care, everybody, and peace out.